All right, let's jump right into this one because today we're breaking down a truly unbelievable match from the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I am so pumped to talk about this because this Group I clash between Norway and Iraq at Gillette Stadium, it wasn't just your standard opening game. It was this massive collision of history, raw emotion, and just sheer attacking firepower. We're talking about the highly anticipated debut of one of the world's most lethal strikers, going up against an underdog team that played with absolute, unyielding heart. So, let's get into exactly how this historic showdown actually unfolded. So 28 and 40. I want you to think about those numbers for a second. They aren't just random stats. That is the agonizing number of years fans of these two nations had to sit and wait to see their teams finally return to the biggest stage in sports. Norway hadn't touched a World Cup pitch in 28 years, missing out every single time since 1998. And Iraq? An absolutely staggering 40-year absence, with their last appearance all the way back in 1986. That really tells you everything you need to know about the immense emotional weight carried by every single player out there in Boston.
Which really brings us to the core question here. What actually happens when Iraq's deeply passionate 40-year wait collides head-on with the world's most dangerous striker making his major tournament debut? Of course, I'm talking about Erling Haaland. You've got this gritty underdog carrying the dreams of an entire nation up against a dark horse European powerhouse led by a literal footballing giant. I mean, the dramatic narrative going into this game was just off the charts.
To really grasp the stakes here, let's just map out the timeline. 1986, that was the first and honestly the only time Iraq had ever reached the World Cup. Then 1998, Norway's last appearance, where they actually made a solid run to the round of 16. We are talking about entire generations of fans in both countries who had literally never seen their teams play in this tournament. So when they finally clashed in 2026, the historical stakes couldn't have been any higher. Both sides were just absolutely desperate to prove they finally belonged back on that global stage.
Okay, let's dive into the actual matchup. Norway breezed out of UEFA qualifying with a perfect record. They came in heavily touted as a dark horse, boasting this incredibly star-studded squad led by Arsenal captain Martin Odegaard and, you guessed it, Erling Haaland. And here's the kicker. Their super tight off-field friendship translates into this lethal, almost telepathic chemistry on the pitch. Facing them is Iraq. Managed by Bram Arnold, they literally had to fight tooth and nail through the Interconfederation playoffs just to be here. They came in as massive underdogs, completely banking on their incredible passion, tight defensive discipline, and sheer ambition.
Now, get a load of this stat. 57 goals in just 51 international appearances. That was Erling Haaland's mind-boggling track record before the whistle even blew. It's a completely staggering statistic. But you have to remember, because Norway hadn't qualified for a World Cup or even a European Championship during his lifetime, this was his very first match in a major international tournament. Literally everyone was asking, would World Cup Haaland be worth the wait? Spoiler alert, absolutely.
Honestly, it only took 29 minutes for him to answer that question. Norway opened the scoring with this beautifully constructed, patient team goal. It started all the way back with their 35-year-old keeper, Ørjan Nyland, and they cycled through 14 consecutive passes. The ball eventually works its way to left back David Müller-Wolf, who swings in a brilliant cross. And who else is waiting there? Haaland. He makes one of those trademark unstoppable runs into the box and clinically slides in at the back post to poke it right home. 1-0 Norway. But hey, if you thought Iraq was just going to roll over and give up, you'd be entirely wrong. For the first 75 minutes of this game, Iraq put up a fiercely impressive resistance. They figured out that shutting down Norway meant they had to break that connection between best friends Odegaard and Haaland. So they bravely took the fight right to the midfield. They swarmed Odegaard, totally cut off his passing lanes, and their midfielder, Amir Al-Amari, who plays over in Poland, was just fantastic. He dominated possession and constantly created chances, completely refusing to let Norway dictate the tempo.
And you know what? That brave tactical execution totally paid off in the 39th minute. Al-Amari chips this gorgeous cross into the box, and veteran Iraqi striker Ayman Hussein just rises above the entire defense to plant a towering header right past the Norwegian keeper. I mean, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated euphoria. With that one strike, Ayman Hussein became only the second Iraqi player in the history of the sport to ever score at a World Cup. The stadium just erupted. Game on, 1-1.
But, well, elite teams don't really stay down for long, do they? Just 4 minutes later, in the 43rd minute, Erling Haaland strikes again.
Iraq had built up all this incredible momentum, but Holland just relentlessly closed down the Iraqi defense. He forced this chaotic mix-up between defender Zaid Tahsin and goalkeeper Jalal Hassan and just pounced to restore Norway's lead right before halftime. It was an absolute gut punch to Iraq, but it proved exactly why having a world-class striker is such an incredible luxury. So, even with that 2-1 lead, things were incredibly tense. Iraq just kept pushing, and Norway really struggled to find any sort of comfort zone. That is, until the 76th minute. Substitute defender Leo Østigard, who had literally only been on the pitch for about 3.5 minutes, finds himself completely unmarked in the box. Martin Ødegaard delivers a pinpoint corner kick, and Østigard just powers a header right past the keeper. That goal finally gave Norway the 3-1 cushion and the breathing room they were so desperately looking for.
Let's break down how that final blow happened deep into stoppage time, because it is just pure heartbreak. You have an absolutely exhausted Zaid Tahsin isolated out wide on the right, and he plays a really risky, overly light pass back toward his keeper. Under the immense, sprinting pressure of Erling Haaland bearing down on him, goalkeeper Jalal Hassan understandably panics. His attempted clearance deflects disastrously into his own net. It was literally an own goal born out of pure exhaustion, making it 4-1. When that final whistle blew, the contrast was staggering. On one side, you had total heartbreak for an Iraqi team that fought so valiantly. On the other, pure, unfiltered Norwegian joy. Just listen to this quote from Haaland after he was named player of the match. He said, "My first goal is nice, the second even nicer, so it's fantastic and I'm proud. We were expected to win, and we won fortunately. Now everybody in Norway will be happy, and I hope people will party." It's such a brilliant reflection of the massive relief and euphoria for the whole European squad.
Now, zooming out for a second, why were these 3 points absolutely non-negotiable for Norway? Well, Group I is widely considered the undeniable group of death in the 2026 World Cup. Think about it. You have an elite European giant in France, you've got arguably the strongest team in Africa with Senegal, this highly ambitious dark horse Norwegian squad, and a remarkably capable Iraqi team. Securing a win in the opening match was literally critical to surviving this brutal gauntlet.
And when we run the numbers, it brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Because France defeated Senegal 3-1 earlier, both European giants sit on 3 points. But look at the margins. Thanks to that late tragic own goal by Iraq, Norway actually sits at the very top of the group of death with a +3 goal difference, edging out powerhouse France, who are sitting at +2. In a group this insanely tight, those tiny margin of victory details could easily be the difference between packing your bags and advancing to the knockouts. Which leaves us with a pretty massive, provocative question as we look ahead to the rest of the tournament. Can Norway's supporting cast actually elevate Erling Haaland enough to conquer this group of death? We literally just saw Iraq successfully stifle Norway's midfield, and specifically that vital Ødegaard connection, for a solid 75 minutes. You better believe elite teams like France and a desperate Senegal will be studying that game tape very closely. Haaland's scoring feels inevitable, right? But can the rest of the Norwegian squad step up when the pressure reaches its absolute peak? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Thanks so much for exploring this incredible matchup with me.